Welcome back, I'm Samael. Here begins our real journey through the lore of Warhammer 40K, after the hints we made in the first video. If you find this content interesting, please leave a like and a comment with your opinions, and subscribe. Let's start with the main question. Where and when did it all start? The where is, as mentioned before, the Milky Way. And if we want, from a certain point of view, is therefore a rather narrow setting if we compare it to the whole universe. On the other hand, however, we are talking about a cluster of stars that extends for about 100,000 light years, wanting to consider the diameter alone. We are talking about something like hundreds of billions of systems, a number so vast that our minds can hardly have an understanding that goes beyond mere intuition. Such is the stage of our work. The when. Well, it's not easy to define because clearly no one was there to document it. Certainly many millions and perhaps billions of years before. It is hypothesized that it was some sort of cataclysm that generated the universe, and at the same time, this creates the laws that govern it. It is something often taken for granted, but the fact that dynamics of physics can be studied and described in mathematical formulas is something amazing, because at the same time, intrinsic and extrinsic to the matter. However, along with the creation of the whole, life is also created. Of course, it is only in a primordial form, but is still life. Stars begin to form thanks to gas and dust compacted by gravity, and it is to them that is linked the existence of the C'tan, the stellar gods. They are the first creatures ever, and they are ethereal, without a stable solid form. They wrap the stars, absorbing their energy, draining them and extinguishing them. They do not have a real interest for matter. In fact, they limit themselves to a parasitic survival similar to vampires of stars. But now, let's leave them aside for a while keeping them in mind, because we will talk about them again, and we will talk about them a lot actually. Let's take an undefined time jump forward, reaching 60 million years before the 41st millennium. The galaxy has taken a well-defined shape, and the C'tan are no longer the only living beings. On the contrary, in the meantime, new creatures have come to light. But these are different and are anything but ethereal and changeable entities of energy, but have immortal bodies and, above all, self-awareness. They are the Old Ones, the first sentient beings in history. Of course, this is not the name they gave themselves, far from it. They were the Eldar who, as we shall see, knew them particularly well. The Old Ones, therefore, are a race from the appearance that we would call reptilian, cold-blooded creatures, but with enormous technological and physical knowledge. In fact, they are the first to be able to move in the galaxy for enormous distances. Among their knowledge, we include, of course, the warp. As profound connoisseurs of the cosmos, they discover a way to travel through it, teleporting from one point to another on the material reality. This happens thanks to the webway, a series of tunnels, paths, passages, which connect warp gates, with respect to which they remain separate, partitioned, safe from any malignant forces, which, however, in this phase, are dormant and undisturbed. The ability to move quickly is fundamental. The Old Ones expand more and more, bridging in an instant distances that would otherwise require millennia to cover. They colonize planets, but not only. In fact, they are not simple explorers. They are actually also a kind of demiurges, of creators, In fact, they shape and terraform worlds, give life to different civilizations and species. Actually, they possess a relatively peaceful soul and believe that life, in whatever form it expresses itself, is precious. Their expansion is relentless, and they go as far as the edge of the galaxy, just a small step away from the intergalactic void. We found ourselves among the oldest stars in the Milky Way, the so-called aura stars, but at some point, something happens that will change their story forever. They meet another technologically advanced species, although not as advanced as them: the Necrontyr. This people is composed of humanoids and has a tragic history, to say the least, full of suffering and frustration. Everything starts from their homeworld, a hellish place because sterile and literally flooded with radiation from the nearby star and ionizing solar winds. The Necrontyr are therefore destined to difficult lives, constantly fighting for survival from the natural elements. And as if that were not enough, the radiation causes, with almost certainty, diseases, cancers, malformations, and more generally, very troubled and extremely precarious lives. They try to live sheltered from the influence of their star, at the same time fundamental for life itself, and adverse to it. However, their attempts are not useful, and even the experiments that they conduct to try to overcome such a limited existence fail. The only solution is to concentrate their efforts and try to get as far away as possible from that cursed star. They create ships and move farther and farther away, but very slowly. And they do it thanks to the ships made not in normal metals, but with a so-called living metal. This has characteristics that almost make it seem organic, with the possibility to grow. In the ships they use, they prepare crypts of stasis to allow them to survive during very long journeys, which they could not have concluded otherwise, given their short lives. In fact, they do not know the warp. They do not know what it is and how to use it, so each movement must be done at a very slow speed, which requires enormous amounts of time. However, with hard work and extreme sacrifice, the Necrontyr dynasties reach far into the galaxy and dominate an abundant portion of it. Their empire is ruled by the Triarchy, which is a true triumvirate, a council formed by 3 pharaohs whose leader had the name of Silent King, since he addressed his subordinates only through the other 2 pharaohs. In theory, this is a position that is transferred by inheritance, but the precariousness of the existence of Necrontyr means that in practice, this position passes from one dynasty to another rather often. However, as we have already mentioned, they finally run into the old ones. And so, on the one hand, we find the Necrontyr, mortal humanoids with uncertain and at best short lives. On the other hand, the old ones, advanced creatures with skills that are incomprehensible to them, able to manipulate the warp with psychic powers useful and very developed, but above all, immortal. Irony of destiny. And so, hope ignites in the hearts of the Necrontyr, who see in the new encounter the answer to their suffering, to the drama that has afflicted their people for ages, to the condemnation that weighs painfully on the fragile entities.